Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Wolf, and I just watched The Last Problem, the series finale for My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. It is an exceptionally heartwarming episode, and a lovely goodbye for the series as a whole. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the lesson, and how it's not only speaking to this new pony Luster, but kind of talking to the audience too. And yeah, it's very much a lesson that affects children and adults. And it really gets you to sit back and think. I love stories that can get you to ponder about your own life. And this episode just does it in spades. Oh, the last two episodes, they've been so exciting and so over-the-top fun, and they've been incredibly funny. This final episode is very much a curtain call. It's having all the characters have one last moment to take a bow for the audience. And it is done so well. I really have to hand it to the MLP staff for really knocking this out of the park. Kind of closing out the story, and yet still leaving so many more possibilities. And I'm still feeling satisfied by the result. It's just lovely. At any rate, going back to the beginning, Spike is a little grown up. Far from a full-grown dragon that we've seen in the series, but yeah, he looks very much like an adult nowadays. And Twilight, I have to imagine they probably used Celestia's model and added Twilight's features to it. That makes a lot of sense here, because how she moves and how she sits and how she is talking, it very much like Celestia, and I'm sure that's with very good reason. However, there is her prize student, her most gifted student, this Luster character who doesn't believe in friendship, who was very much like how Twilight was in the very first episode of the series, and maybe even taking a page out of Moondancer's book, just wanting to spend all her time studying. And then hearing Twilight talk about, well, you're right, friendships can drift apart, but that doesn't mean that they end. Friends can move on to many different aspects of their lives, and you won't always be able to get to spend as much time with them as you like, but that doesn't mean that friendships end. And the entire episode, going through the flashbacks of Twilight's coronation and going through the future, where the main six look like the equivalent of women in their 40s or maybe even 50s. I mean, quite a lot of time has passed. And trying to think, well, what does that mean for the future? When you have to take those steps, when you have to move away, when every one of your friends' careers are leading them down different paths. And how do you live with that? How do you move on with that? How do you stay in touch with each other? It's a wonderful way to say goodbye to not only for the characters, but for the audience. It's just so heartwarming to watch all of these characters and where they end up. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because much of the episode is dedicated to this flashback of Twilight's coronation. And even though Twilight is feeling like packing up everything from her home, and thinking, well, I've got to make sure to get everything. We got to take all our memories with us. And how Spike is the one who says, you know, I don't really think so much about comic books anymore. I'm kind of growing up. And yeah, that's kind of a tough decision for a lot of people. Do you try to hold on to every memory and take them with you no matter where you go in life? Or is it enough that you remember those things that you enjoyed in your younger years, but don't have to have them stacked in shelves and bookcases and every inch of wall that you have for every home you go through for the rest of your life. There are many arguments both for and against for taking all your memories with you no matter where you go. And it's hard for anyone to let go of those memories, especially when it was something that they loved. I mean, Twilight wants to take Power Pony's comic because it was something that Spike was truly passionate about, and she doesn't want to let that go. Spike has been her #1 assistant, and really her family throughout much of her life. And to see that Spike is ready to move on, and yet Twilight herself isn't quite there yet. Oh goodness, there are so many aspects of real life that can deeply touch on. And I believe the writers handled it in a very mature way here, because the rest of the main 6 are all so busy trying to make the coronation as best as it can be that they are kind of ignoring how Twilight is feeling. And how they confess later on, I guess we were so focused on trying to make everything right for the coronation that it was because we wanted to be so focused in our work and not have to think about how sad or scared we are that life is changing this way. Losing yourself in work so you don't have to think about how sad you are. I know I can relate to that very deeply. I know that's something that I still struggle with myself. And I appreciate that MLP is able to address that same topic in such a well thought out way. At any rate though, the coronation, as expected, doesn't quite go off without a hitch. I mean, very first thing when Twilight comes out to speak to everybody, she trips over her dress. It's unfortunate, but yeah, that's Twilight for you. And the animals aren't quite able to do their thing. The fireworks are scaring and even upsetting the Wonderbolt's routine, and they're pouring applesauce into glasses instead of apple juice. And there's all kinds of things that just don't quite work. And Twilight almost drops the crown, but manages to save it at just the last moment. And I love how Luna says, close enough. That's a great way to put it. I also very much appreciate that the royal sisters take each of their crowns and combine it into one for Twilight. That's wonderful. That's a great way to pass on the mantle, so to speak. And then how Twilight says, as my first royal decree, you are all now my council of friendship. And that I insist we meet once a moon in order to stay in touch and help each other throughout our lives. Yeah, hearing that, it reminds me of my own friends that I've made in the Brony community over the years. And even outside of conventions and chatting with each other via Skype chats here and there. I do hope that long after this show has come to an end, that we all stay in touch. That we all meet together every so often. Even though living in many different parts of the world, I want to make that effort and make sure that such friendships last a lifetime. It's a good reminder when I'm watching this final episode of MLP, I will always remember I should stay in contact with my friends. I should see what their lives are like these days. I hope that I feel motivated to come back to this series every few years at least, so I can remember that. How important that is. As the final song puts it, the magic of friendship grows. Yeah, it's kind of hard to listen to that song and watch all of these characters have their one final bow to the audience, so to speak, and not feel so nostalgic for how it all began. The episode even ends with a book closing, just how the first episode opened with a book opening. It's kind of like Starlight and Spike's gift to Twilight, the video scrapbook. That's a great way to hold on to memories. little clips of your lives together from years past. I suppose that's another benefit to making YouTube videos, because it is something I can always go back to whenever I so choose. And think back to collaboration projects and meeting with friends in real life and be able to remember just how things got started. Still, it is lovely to see the characters growing up and even growing old. I mean, you see each of the main 6, like I said before, it seems like the equivalent of women in their 40s, if not 50s. They've all got bags under their eyes, they've got gray in their manes, and yeah, Pinkie Pie even has a little foal of her own. And that's beautiful. If there was ever anyone who could be accepted by the community as being paired off with one of the main 6, I'm glad that it was Weird Al Yankovic. Because it makes so much sense. And it is something that will not only make me chuckle every time I think about it, but it's also still heartwarming. I enjoy how Fluttershy is still taking care of her animals while constantly going into different dimensions of reality. I like how Rarity is kind of working with the yaks these days, because in a later scene you get to see Yona and Sandbar at Rarity's shop. That's a great way for those characters to end up. And even Applejack and Rainbow arguing about doing chores. Oh goodness. Every one of them end up with careers and their own paths in life, and yet they still stay true to each other. And it's wonderful to think about. It truly is. I honestly hope that there is so much more coming in G5, but I am so grateful for what we were given here, because it is such a wonderful way to end the series. In the meantime, though, I would very much like to hear from each of you. There are so many tidbits in this episode that are just... How do you pick a favorite moment? How can you even remember all the character cameos there were? I mean, I lost count of how many there were. I remember there was Capper. I remember there was Tempest. I remember that there was Moondancer. I remember little bits of Lyra and Bonbon. I remember seeing the CMC grown up. I remember seeing Big Mac and Sugar Belle, and they have a little child of their own too. And the list goes on and on. And at the very end, you get to see each of the main 6 kind of jumping across the screen and showing a final curtain call for every one of the big characters, and the secondary characters, and even the minor characters. And it's a wonderful scene. It's a wonderful way to end things. I don't know if I could ever pick a favorite moment here, but I still would very much like to hear what each of you remember most from this final episode. And until next time, I am Dr. Wolf, and as always, I will continually look forward to hearing from you.